Lisa had barely set her overnight bag by the front door when her mother shoved a folded packet into her hands. "Good, you're here," Margaret said briskly. "Everything's written down." Lisa frowned. Everything for what? Before her mother answered, the front door swung open again. Her older brother Kevin rushed inside with 4 children trailing behind him, each carrying backpacks, stuffed animals, and blankets. "Dad, Emma won't let me have the tablet," one of the boys shouted. "I don't want turkey," his younger sister cried. Kevin wasn't listening. He dropped 2 duffel bags beside the staircase and glanced at his watch. "Perfect timing," he said. "They're all yours." Lisa blinked. "Excuse me." He smiled as if she'd just agreed to something. "You always said family comes first." Before she could respond, Kevin kissed each child on the head, turned around, and hurried back outside. "Wait," Lisa called, stepping toward the porch. His SUV door slammed shut. Within seconds, it disappeared down the driveway. Lisa spun toward her parents. Her father's suitcase was already loaded into the trunk. Her mother's purse was over her shoulder. Neither of them looked the least bit surprised. "I thought we were spending Thanksgiving together," Lisa said quietly. Margaret patted her arm. "We are." Then she smiled. "Just not all of us." Lisa had been looking forward to this Thanksgiving for months. As a senior physical therapist at one of the busiest rehabilitation hospitals in the state, she rarely received extended time off. Patients depended on her, coworkers traded shifts with her, and holidays almost always meant overtime. This year had been different. For the first time in nearly 3 years, she had managed to schedule 5 consecutive vacation days. She imagined lazy mornings, family dinners, card games with her grandfather, and finally catching up on sleep. Instead, she stood in her childhood living room, surrounded by Kevin's 4 energetic children, while her parents calmly prepared to leave. She looked down at the packet Margaret had forced into her hands. It wasn't a welcome note. It was a detailed schedule. Breakfast times, medication reminders, school assignments, nap routines, soccer practice, emergency contacts, 5 separate daily meal plans. Every page covered the next 5 days. Lisa slowly looked back up. This was planned. Margaret didn't deny it. "You've always been wonderful with children." "I wasn't asked." "We knew you'd say yes eventually." "I never said yes." Richard zipped his suitcase. "Lisa, don't make this difficult." Kevin honked from outside. Margaret headed for the door. "We'll be back before dessert." Lisa followed them onto the porch. "Dessert, Thanksgiving dinner is tonight." No one answered. Instead, 3 vehicles rolled away one after another. Only after the last car disappeared did one of the children tug, gently on Lisa's sleeve. "Aunt Lisa." She forced a smile. "Yeah. When is Mommy coming back?" Lisa stared down the now empty road. She had absolutely no answer. Later that afternoon, while trying to cook for 4 hungry children and answer endless questions, her phone buzzed repeatedly. A cousin had tagged Margaret in vacation photos. Lisa opened them. Her parents and Kevin were standing barefoot on a white sand beach, tropical drinks in hand, laughing beneath a bright blue sky. The location tag showed a luxury coastal resort hundreds of miles away. Her stomach dropped. She called her mother immediately. Voicemail. She called Kevin. No answer. Then the text messages began. "Margaret, asterisk please don't ruin this trip with unnecessary drama." "Kevin, asterisk you're getting free time with your nieces and nephews. Relax." "Richard, asterisk family helps family." Lisa looked around the kitchen. One child was crying over spilled juice. Another couldn't find his inhaler. The youngest wanted her bedtime story before sunset. The oldest quietly asked if dinner would be ready soon. She realized the awful truth. Her only 5 vacation days were gone. Not because of an emergency. Not because someone needed help. Because the people she trusted had carefully arranged for her to become their unpaid babysitter while they enjoyed a luxury vacation. That evening, after finally getting all 4 children bathed, fed, and settled into pajamas, Lisa collapsed onto the sofa for what she hoped would be 5 uninterrupted minutes. A sharp knock echoed through the house. 3 slow knocks. Firm. Deliberate. She opened the front door. An elderly gentleman stood on the porch in a dark overcoat, carrying a worn leather briefcase. His eyes moved past her toward the empty house. Then he asked quietly, "Is Richard home? Your grandfather is expecting him." Lisa hesitated before answering. "I'm sorry, my parents aren't here." The elderly man studied her face for a moment. "They're not." She shook her head. "No. And Richard didn't mention he would be away." "No." The man glanced toward the driveway, now empty except for Lisa's car. "I see." He offered a polite smile. "My name is Harold Dawson." He held out a business card. "Would you mind if I waited a few minutes? I was asked to deliver something personally." Lisa stepped aside. "Of course." As Mr. Dawson entered the house, the peaceful expression on his face never changed, but his eyes quietly took in everything around him. One child raced across the hallway wearing mismatched socks. Another called from upstairs, "Aunt Lisa, I can't find my toothbrush." A third sat at the kitchen table, struggling with homework, while the youngest tugged repeatedly on Lisa's sweater. "I'm hungry again." Lisa laughed apologetically. "Give me just 1 second." She hurried into the kitchen, stirred a pot on the stove, helped one child with math, found another child's pajamas, then returned carrying a glass of water for Mr. Dawson. "I'm sorry," she said. "Today's been—" She searched for the right word. "Unexpected." Mr. Dawson accepted the glass. "I can see that." For nearly 20 minutes, he said very little. Instead, he quietly watched Lisa move from one responsibility to another without stopping. She reheated dinner after one child refused vegetables. She searched medicine cabinets for allergy medication. She cleaned spilled milk off the floor before it reached the carpet. She answered homework questions. She untangled an argument over whose turn it was to use the bathroom. Not once did she complain in front of the children. When the house finally settled into a brief silence, Mr. Dawson spoke. "Where are everyone's parents spending Thanksgiving?" Lisa hesitated. She wasn't sure why the question felt important. "There." She unlocked her phone. "At a beach resort." She handed him the screen. Mr. Dawson looked carefully at the vacation photographs. Margaret smiled beside a swimming pool. Richard raised a tropical drink toward the camera. Kevin posed with sunglasses and his arm around a resort employee dressed as a pirate for holiday entertainment. Mr. Dawson's expression changed almost imperceptibly. "When were these taken?" "This afternoon." "And they left these children with you?" "Without asking." "You never agreed beforehand." Lisa shook her head. "I drove here because my parents invited me for Thanksgiving dinner." She laughed once, but there was no humor in it. "I didn't even know I was babysitting until they were already leaving." Mr. Dawson folded his hands together. "I'd like to ask you a few questions, if that's all right." "Okay." "Who invited you?" "My mother." "When?" "About 3 weeks ago." "Did anyone ever mention childcare?" "No." "Did anyone ask whether you were willing to care for 4 children for 5 days?" "No." "Were you given any opportunity to decline?" Lisa looked down. "No." Mr. Dawson slowly opened his briefcase and removed a small notebook. He began writing. Not casually. Carefully. Almost like someone recording witness statements. Lisa couldn't help noticing. May I ask why these questions matter? He smiled politely. They may become important. Before Lisa could ask another question, 8-year-old Emma wandered into the kitchen, holding her favorite stuffed rabbit. She climbed onto a chair beside Mr. Dawson. Mister. Yes. Are you Grandpa's friend? His eyebrows lifted slightly. I know your great-grandfather. Emma nodded. Daddy said great-grandpa wasn't supposed to know they went to the beach. Lisa froze. Mr. Dawson didn't react immediately. Instead, he asked gently, Did your father say that? Emma nodded without hesitation. He said if great-grandpa asked, we were all having Thanksgiving together. Before Lisa could process those words, another child joined them. No, one of the boys corrected. Dad said Aunt Lisa would handle everything like always. The children returned to playing, completely unaware of what they had revealed. Lisa slowly looked toward Mr. Dawson. He was writing again. Every word. Every detail. Without interruption. Nearly an hour later, after the children were finally asleep upstairs, Mr. Dawson stood and closed his notebook. I need to make one phone call. He stepped onto the front porch. Lisa remained inside, cleaning the dinner dishes. The kitchen window was cracked open, just enough for a few words to drift inside. Yes, sir. A pause. I've arrived. Another pause. Then his voice became lower. You need to hear what I've personally witnessed. Silence followed. The conversation lasted less than 2 minutes. When he returned inside, his calm expression had changed. Not angry. Resolved. He picked up his briefcase and turned toward Lisa. Thank you for answering my questions honestly. She searched his face. Can you at least tell me what's going on? He paused at the doorway. I can tell you one thing. What? He met her eyes. Things are about to change much faster than your family expects. He walked out into the cold Thanksgiving night, leaving Lisa standing in the doorway, staring after him as questions raced through her mind. For the first time since her parents had driven away, she felt something unexpected. Maybe she wasn't facing this alone after all. The next morning, Lisa was flipping pancakes while trying to settle an argument over cereal when the doorbell rang again. She wiped her hands on a towel and opened the door. Her Aunt Denise stood outside carrying 2 pies. Happy Thanksgiving. She stopped mid-sentence. You look exhausted. Lisa managed a tired smile. Come in. As Denise stepped inside, she immediately noticed 4 children scattered around the living room. Where's Margaret? Gone. Richard? Gone. And Kevin? Lisa gave a small nod. Gone too. Denise frowned. Gone where? Lisa silently handed her phone over. Denise stared at the beach resort photographs. They left. For 5 days. With all 4 kids. Without asking me first. Denise looked around the room in disbelief. You've got to be kidding. Within the next hour, more relatives began arriving for the annual Thanksgiving gathering. Instead of walking into Margaret's perfectly prepared holiday dinner, they found Lisa rushing between the kitchen and the dining room with flour on her shirt, one child crying over a broken toy, another asking for help with homework, and the youngest asleep on the couch beneath a blanket. Confusion quickly spread. Where's your mother? I thought Richard was smoking the turkey. Didn't Kevin say he'd be here? Every question received the same answer. They left yesterday. Soon the resort photos were circulating from phone to phone. One cousin zoomed in on the images. They're at Ocean Crest Resort. Another shook his head. That's almost 6 hours away. They've been planning this. They didn't even hide it. The mood inside the house changed from confusion to outrage. Lisa never intended to expose anyone. She simply answered every question honestly. I thought we were celebrating together. I didn't know about the trip. They handed me a schedule. They left before I could even respond. Her Uncle Peter asked quietly, "They expected you to stay here all week." Lisa nodded. I only realized it after they were gone. The room fell silent. Everyone knew Lisa rarely took time off work. Many remembered how often she had skipped holidays because of hospital shifts. This had been her first extended vacation in years, and it had vanished before it even started. Kevin finally responded, but not by coming home. Instead, his messages appeared in the family group chat. Kevin, everybody needs to stop overreacting. Another message appeared seconds later. Kevin, Lisa isn't doing us a favor. She's family. Then another. Kevin, she owes the family after everything Mom and Dad have done for her. Several relatives stared at their phones in disbelief. Uncle Peter muttered, "Owes them." Aunt Denise shook her head. She's 34 years old, not a teenager living at home. Before anyone could respond, another notification appeared. This time it was Margaret. Margaret, Lisa enjoys making herself the victim. The dining room erupted. Victim. They abandoned 4 children. She wasn't even asked. They're blaming her. For the first time in years, Lisa wasn't the only person questioning her parents' behavior. The rest of the family was seeing it too. Late that afternoon, Mr. Dawson quietly returned. He greeted everyone politely before setting his briefcase beside the dining table. Most relatives simply assumed he was another family friend. Then Aunt Alina looked up. Her face went pale. "Harold." "Mr." Dawson smiled politely. "It's been a long time." The room became noticeably quieter. Uncle Peter looked from one to the other. "You know him?" Denise answered before anyone else could. "Of course." She lowered her voice. "He's handled Grandpa's legal affairs for years." Several heads turned toward Mr. Dawson. Lisa blinked. "You work for Grandpa." "I represent his interests," Mr. Dawson replied calmly. No one spoke. Suddenly, every question he had asked the night before made perfect sense. Mr. Dawson opened his notebook. "Lisa, would you mind showing me the schedule your mother left?" She handed him the packet. He examined every page carefully. "May I also have copies of the text messages?" "Of course." She forwarded everything. He requested screenshots of the resort photographs, the group chat messages, and the timestamps showing exactly when everyone had left. One cousin even offered security camera footage, showing the 3 vehicles departing together. Mr. Dawson accepted each piece without comment. He organized everything inside his briefcase with remarkable precision. Finally, he closed the clasps. "I believe I have everything I need." Aunt Denise stepped forward. "Everything for what?" Mr. Dawson looked around the room before answering. "Your father has requested an immediate family meeting as soon as Richard, Margaret, and Kevin return." Denise frowned. "Why?" Mr. Dawson's voice remained calm. "Because today's events directly affect decisions your father has already been considering." The room fell completely silent. No one asked another question. For the first time, everyone realized this Thanksgiving was no longer just about abandoned childcare. It had become something that could permanently change the entire family's future. By sunrise the following morning, panic had already reached the beach resort. Lisa didn't have to imagine it. Her phone wouldn't stop ringing. Margaret called first. Lisa let it go to voicemail. Seconds later, Richard called. Then Kevin. Within 15 minutes, she had 23 missed calls. The messages came one after another. "Margaret, please answer. We need to explain." Richard, don't let people exaggerate what happened." Kevin, Asterisk nobody intended for this to get blown out of proportion. Lisa read every message without replying. For the first time in years, she wasn't rushing to smooth things over. She simply slipped the phone back into her pocket and helped the youngest child tie her shoes. An hour later, another call came. This time, Lisa answered. Kevin spoke before she could say a word. Lisa, listen to me. I'm listening. You've talked to Grandpa's lawyer. Yes. You don't need to tell Grandpa everything. I've already answered his questions honestly. Kevin exhaled sharply. It was one vacation. It was my entire vacation. We were going to thank you. You never even asked me. There was silence. Then Kevin lowered his voice. What if I pay you? Lisa frowned. What? I'll cover your lost vacation. I don't want your money. I'll double it. You think this is about babysitting? No. It's about lying. He didn't answer. Lisa ended the call. Margaret called almost immediately afterward. Her voice sounded nothing like it had in the resort photographs. Sweetheart. Lisa closed her eyes. Please don't call me sweetheart right now. We never meant to hurt you. You planned this for weeks. It wasn't like that. You printed a 5-day childcare schedule. Margaret hesitated. We just knew you'd help. You knew I'd never leave 4 children alone. Silence filled the line. You used that against me. Margaret quietly began crying. It was only supposed to be a family favor. Lisa's voice remained steady. A favor is something someone agrees to. She hung up. Later that afternoon, Mr. Dawson returned exactly as promised. He placed his briefcase on the dining room table. I spoke with your grandfather. Lisa looked up. How is he? Tired. A small smile crossed his face, but very clear. He removed several folders. He reviewed every photograph, every text message, every statement from your relatives, the children's comments, those as well. Lisa looked toward the living room, where Kevin's children were building a blanket fort. They didn't know what they were saying. I know. They were simply telling the truth. Mr. Dawson folded his hands. Your grandfather has one request. What is it? When everyone arrives, answer every question honestly. Nothing more. Nothing less. As relatives continued stopping by throughout the day, conversations began shifting. At first, people discussed the vacation. Then they started remembering other holidays. Aunt Denise spoke first. Remember when Lisa canceled her birthday dinner because Kevin needed someone to watch the twins? Uncle Peter nodded. And Christmas 3 years ago. Another cousin added. She missed Grandma's anniversary trip because your parents volunteered her to stay behind with the children. Someone else remembered Easter. Another remembered Labor Day. Then graduation weekend. One memory became 5. 5 became 10. The stories kept coming. Lisa sat quietly. She had forgotten many of them herself. Not because they hadn't mattered. Because she'd convinced herself they were normal. Mr. Dawson listened without interrupting. Occasionally, he made another note. A clear pattern was emerging. This Thanksgiving wasn't an isolated mistake. It was simply the first time everyone else had witnessed it. That evening, Mr. Dawson closed his notebook. I believe we're ready. For what? Lisa asked. Your grandfather would like to see everyone tomorrow morning. He handed Lisa an address. It wasn't unfamiliar. Grandpa's estate. He'd like you to ride with me. Lisa nodded. The next morning, the drive was unusually quiet. Mr. Dawson focused on the road while Lisa stared out the window, wondering what awaited them. As they turned through the iron gates of Grandpa's estate, another set of vehicles sped into the driveway behind them. Richard jumped out before his SUV had fully stopped. Margaret hurried after him, tears already streaming down her face. Kevin slammed his door and rushed toward the front entrance. They reached the porch only seconds after Lisa and Mr. Dawson. The front door opened. Grandpa stood inside, leaning on a polished wooden cane. His recovery from surgery had slowed him, but not diminished the authority in his voice. He looked first at Lisa, then at Margaret. Richard. Kevin. Finally, he pointed toward the sitting room. Sit down. No one moved. His expression hardened. I've finally learned what really happens whenever I trust the three of you. No one spoke as they entered the sitting room. Grandpa remained standing for a moment, one hand resting on his cane. Age had slowed him physically, but the quiet authority in his voice filled the room. Mr. Dawson placed his leather briefcase on the coffee table and opened it. Inside were neatly organized folders. Photographs. Printed text messages. The childcare schedule Margaret had left behind. Statements from relatives. Notes from his own observations. Grandpa looked at Margaret first. When I invited everyone to Thanksgiving, I expected my family to gather together. Margaret swallowed hard. We were going to explain. No, Grandpa interrupted calmly. Today you're going to answer. He turned toward Mr. Dawson. Tell me exactly what you found. Mr. Dawson spoke without emotion. I arrived at the home on Thanksgiving evening. Richard and Margaret were absent. Kevin was absent. Miss Lisa was caring for 4 children by herself. He described the overflowing laundry basket. The unfinished homework spread across the kitchen table. The medicine schedule taped to the refrigerator. The detailed 5-day childcare packet. He explained that Lisa had never agreed to watch the children and had only learned the truth after everyone left. Finally, he handed Grandpa copies of the resort photographs. They were taken while Miss Lisa was providing childcare. Grandpa nodded slowly. I've seen them. He looked toward Kevin. Is any part of this inaccurate? Kevin lowered his head. No. Grandpa turned another page. Then explain these messages. He read them aloud. Family helps family. Lisa owes the family. Stop ruining everyone's vacation. Every sentence sounded harsher spoken aloud than it had looked on a phone screen. Richard rubbed his forehead. We didn't think she'd mind. Lisa looked at him in disbelief. You never asked. Margaret finally spoke through tears. We knew you'd say yes. Lisa shook her head. No. You knew I'd never abandon your grandchildren. The room became silent. Even Kevin couldn't argue. Because she was right. They hadn't relied on her kindness. They had relied on her inability to walk away from innocent children. Grandpa slowly folded his hands. This isn't about one Thanksgiving. He looked around the room. It's about years. He turned toward Lisa. I have a question. She nodded. Answer honestly. I will. How long has this been happening? Lisa hesitated. Then quietly she answered. I don't know. Everyone looked at her. I stopped counting. She drew a slow breath. I've missed birthdays. I've canceled vacations. I've worked holidays because someone volunteered me to help afterward. I've used my paid leave to babysit. I skipped conferences that would have helped my career. I've spent weekends cleaning houses that weren't mine. She looked at her parents. And every single time, I convinced myself that's what a good daughter was supposed to do. Margaret covered her face. Richard couldn't meet her eyes. Kevin stared at the floor. One by one, the relatives who had gathered for the meeting began speaking. I remember the Christmas she stayed behind with the twins. I remember canceling her birthday dinner. I thought she volunteered. So did I. I never realized she wasn't being asked. The memories kept coming. Not one or two. Years of them. A pattern that no one had noticed until this Thanksgiving forced everyone to see it all at once. Grandpa closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them again, they rested on Lisa. "I owe you an apology." She looked surprised. "I believed your parents whenever they told me you simply enjoyed helping." He shook his head. "I should have asked you." Lisa felt tears fill her eyes. "You were never the problem," Grandpa continued. "You were simply the easiest person to take advantage of because you cared more about keeping peace than protecting yourself." For the first time in years, someone had said aloud what she had never been able to admit herself. Grandpa nodded toward Mr. Dawson. "It's time." Mr. Dawson slid a new folder across the table. Grandpa signed several documents before placing the pen down. "I've made my decision." Richard leaned forward. "Dad, this decision is final." He looked directly at Lisa. "Effective immediately, you will serve as executor of my estate." Lisa's eyes widened. "Grandpa, you've demonstrated responsibility without expecting reward." He turned toward Mr. Dawson. "My healthcare directives will also be updated." Mr. Dawson nodded. "They already have been." Grandpa then faced Kevin. "The financial authority I intended to give you is suspended indefinitely." Kevin's face fell. "Dad, please. You've shown me poor judgment." He looked at Margaret and Richard. "And the two of you will no longer make family decisions on my behalf." Neither of them argued. They knew exactly why. Grandpa wasn't finished. "One more thing." Everyone looked at him. "From today forward, no one in this family volunteers someone else's time." He looked directly at Kevin. "If you need childcare, you ask." Then at Margaret. "If someone says no, you accept it." Finally, he smiled gently at Lisa. "And if you want to spend Thanksgiving resting, traveling, or sitting alone with a good book." He chuckled softly. "That is your decision." Lisa laughed through her tears. "I don't even remember the last time someone told me that." "You'll remember this one." The months that followed changed more than one holiday. Family gatherings became smaller but more honest. Kevin hired professional childcare whenever he needed help instead of assuming Lisa would step in. Margaret and Richard slowly began rebuilding trust, not through promises, but through respecting boundaries they had ignored for years. Some relationships never returned to what they had been. Oddly, Lisa no longer wanted them to. She had spent too much of her life believing love had to be earned through sacrifice. Now she understood something different. Real love respected the word no. Grandpa recovered steadily and often invited Lisa to visit. Sometimes they shared dinner. Sometimes they simply sat on the porch watching the sunset. No chores. No obligations. No expectations. Just time together. The next Thanksgiving, Lisa used her vacation exactly as she wanted. She spent 2 quiet days hiking in the mountains before joining Grandpa for dinner. When she arrived, he smiled as she walked through the front gate. "You look rested." "I am." "And happy." "I am." He nodded with quiet satisfaction. "That's all I ever wanted for you." Lisa looked around at the peaceful home, then back at the man who had finally seen the truth. The Thanksgiving meant to steal her freedom had instead become the day she reclaimed it, and she never gave it away again.